بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We continue in our discussions with the book of Imam al-Dabusi rahimahullah, and he's currently discussing the four ways that we arrive at certain knowledge through means of sacred texts or sacred indicators, ḥujja sharʿiyya. He said 2 sections ago, he said there's four of these. The first is the Kitab of Allah. The second is the khabar you hear directly from the messenger. The third is the khabar that comes through tawātur from the messenger. And the fourth is the ijma' or the consensus. Now he's discussed the book of God in the last section. There's no section about hadiths you hear directly from the Prophet ﷺ, because that's not a pathway open to him or his readers. So he's gone straight to now the third way we arrive at certain knowledge through these sacred indicators, which is the Mutawātir report. So this very short section is just dedicated to explain what is the Mutawātir report and why is it considered a proof which leads to certain knowledge. So he says in this section, the qawl, we're discussing the tahdeed, specifying exactly what we mean by mutawatir, which I translate as mass transmitted, and that why this thing really is a proof which necessitates, if you like, knowledge of what it's conveying. So he says there's different ways people have defined the mutawatir, and what we prefer, he says, is that it's that which its transmission to you has come through a means which we can call tawātur. Tawātur literally means it comes to you one after one. It comes to you in continuous waves, he said. So he says that it's something which connects to you, or it connects to you from the Prophet alayhi salam through transmission after transmission, tatabu' al-naql, one after one, one after one, one after. So it's as if it's a continuous connection, because the reports keep coming to you. That's the origin of the phrase. And he says, if you want to know how we use this phrase, he says, if you can say in Arabic, tawātarat al-kutub, i.e., اتصل بعضها ببعض بتتابع الورود. So kutub here perhaps is best rendered as letters. So the letters kept coming to you, meaning they came one after one, one after one, one after one in continuous arrival. That's the origin of the phrase, continuous arrival. So this sort of continuous connection between you and the source is only established once we removed the possibility that it's not connected, that there's a disconnect here somewhere. And whenever we remove the possibility of this disconnect, then this continuous connection with the source is as good as, or it resembles very, very strongly then, hearing it directly from the source. So how do you establish this sort of continuous connection, which is as good as hearing directly from the source? So he says the way that we establish such a connection, such a continuous connection, is that a people transmit this to you. A people whom ordinarily it cannot really be conceived that they could have agreed to have colluded to convey a false statement, because the sheer numbers are so many. So this is the idea. We're looking at a report that it's come to you continuously. First this person, then this person, then this person, then that person. And you reach a number where ordinarily you'd think it's not possible anymore that this number of people could have colluded to have conveyed a false report to me. He says, why? Because again, the focus is what's ordinarily observed, because people ordinarily are driven by different motives that lead them to do something in accordance with these different motives. People don't agree to doing one thing or saying one thing or conveying one thing except because of a fact, not a motive, some other fact which has united them and prevented them from disagreeing. What's this other fact? It is either that they're all following the same thing that they've heard, or they've agreed to invent something. And so whenever we can rule out the possibility that they've colluded to invent something, then we have to conclude that they've heard something. And that's what they're conveying, actual hearing, not collusion. And what's this thing that lifts that possibility? It's just this plentitude of number relevant to the fact at hand. Here he gives some examples, and I must admit I was a little bit lost at how he's saying this. So I'll do my best, and if someone here has a better way to render this, then by all means, please add it as a comment. So he says, haven't you considered that you know the sky is above us? And likewise, we've accepted that report just like you know it in the moment by seeing it. One way he's saying is you see the sky and you know it. And many, many people know it by seeing it. So if those many people were to tell someone who hasn't seen it, then at some point the numbers will be so much that the person will have to conclude that the sky is above us with a certitude very similar to the certitude you had by seeing it. And the second one, I have to admit I had to think about it a bit, but I think it's quite clear now. He says, you know your dad by hearing about it, just like he knows you by seeing it. Meaning no son actually knows who his dad is. He doesn't witness the event that makes a dad his dad. But how does everyone know who their dad is? Because they've just heard it so much. This is your dad, I'm your dad. Your mom says, this is your dad. Everyone says, that's your dad. So no son in the world knows who their dad is, again, in ordinary circumstances, except by hearing it. But the knowledge that the son has of the dad is the same as the knowledge the dad has of the son. But the dad's knowledge of the son is by seeing the events that made the son, this person's son. So it's quite a good example, I think, the second one. That ordinarily in the world, sons believe that their certitude that so-and-so is their dad, every son's knowledge that so-and-so is their dad is as certain in the mind and heart of the son as every dad's knowledge that so-and-so is his son, even though the pathway to knowledge is very different. Sons know through hearing it, through continuous reports, this person and that person and that person and that person. And the dad's pathway is very different. No one told him. His knowledge arises through his experience of the events directly. So it's a good example, I feel, of the knowledge of tawātur. It is very similar to the knowledge of observing the events. Now he says, this is a proof equal to, in the knowledge it gives you, a verse of the holy book, of the book of God, because it has been established by proofs. Again, this is a third time we're reading in this section of certain proofs that he's referring to an external subject, which we can generally call ilmul kalam, a subject where proofs are established to uphold the identity and truthfulness of the Prophet in what he conveys. So he said, it's been established, elsewhere, by proofs that the Prophet, may God have mercy and peace on, may God bless him and give him peace, is protected from lying and speaking words which are false. That's one angle, how we know that any hadith which has reached us through tawātur from him gives us certain knowledge of what it's saying. That's one angle. And the other angle, which is actually the same angle, but just based on the fact we've already established that the book of God is a proof, he says, and because the book of God Most High was only known to be such because he told us, as he mentioned in the very last section. And therefore, he is the original proof of all the sacred proofs. It's just him. He's the primary source of all the sacred proofs. And that's why the hadith that's reached us from him through a means of tawātur is as strong in giving us knowledge of what it conveys as the book of Allah is in what it conveys. And he says, pertaining to this are a number of questions which I will raise and answer in the chapter of levels of reports, which will come later. And so that's what he says about the topic of tawātur. And then the next topic is about ijma'. It's a slightly longer topic. It needs much more to be established. That the ijma' is a proof. So So you can see it's a longer section. We'll probably return back to our slides, I think, to summarize. And then a section on what exactly is ijma', the various types of ijma' that people have held, and then some discussions around them. So just to show you, it's quite, and also types of ijma'. So there's a third discussion there. So ijma' will occupy us in the next few sessions before he'll finish this discussion on the sacred proofs that lead to certain knowledge. And then he'll go into types of speech and command and some very interesting discussions thereafter. وصلى الله تعالى على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله